2012 Seed Guide, Cropland Genetics, Corn and Soybean Field Guide, Midwest Laboratories, Fall Fertilizer Recommendations, Agronomic Spotlight by Monsanto, BC Forbibs, Brainy Quotes, Nebraska Production, Nebraska Corn Board. Those are my resources. It is only the farmer who faithfully plants seeds in the spring who reaps a harvest in the autumn. Said by B.C. Forbes. From seed to corn, this is how a Nebraska farmer does it. Having a total of 1,469,001,000 bushels of corn and an average per acre of 166, Nebraska is a small portion of the corn production in the United States, found by Nebraska Production. To start the season of farming is in the spring. Next, in the summer months, is when we take care of the crops that is most important. Lastly, fall is when the farming season starts to wind down. Some people think of springtime as a time to plant flowers, but as a farmer, he thinks it's time to plant some crops. First, we got to pick out the seed. The seed dealer helps the farmer pick out seeds depending on which field you buy for. There are many different types of things that you need to consider when deciding your seed. First, look at the soil samples. This will help you find out which field has which soil type and which population you should be planting at. Seed treatments like insecticide, which is your blue seed, helps protect the seed and the young seedlings from insects and reduces the risk of planting at a lower population, found in the 2012 Seed Guide. Next, you want to think about what day of corn you need. For northeast Nebraska, farmers usually get between 102-day corn to 113-day corn. Now that you have your seed, you have to plant the seed. A couple of questions you have to ask yourself are you going to plant wide row or narrow row, and if you are going to side dress or not. Narrow rows increase the yield by creating an equal distance among the field. As for wide rows, the spacing is not quite as accurate. By side dressing now, you don't have to make another track in the field, which is good for less compaction. Farmers use either starter, which is 3200 or nitrogen, or spread dry urea, which is also nitrogen. After planting, the seed starts to sprout. This is called VE or emergence. When looking for the stages of the corn, you want to count the nodes, which are found at every spot there is a collar. The next stage is V1, which is when the true leaf, which is the round tip leaf, shows, but there is no leaf collar seen. V3 has 3 leaves with collars and 2 without collars. Now that the seed has emerged and has complete leaves, it is time to control your weeds. After planting, farmers take summer months to control weeds and see what is going on in the field. Farmers hire agronomists to scout their fields during the summer. When scouting a field, there is a lot to look for. The first 2 weeks of July, we look for European corn borer, corn rootworm, green stalk, weeds, and which stage the corn is in. In stages B6 through BT, European cornborne is the most damaging. To see if you have European corn borer, there will be shot holes. These holes are on most leaves and they are straight across the leaf from when the European cornborne was in the whorl and ate through. To see if you have corn rootworm, pull up a random stalk, look at the roots. If there is any brown spots on the roots or any dead roots, you have rootworm activity. Green stalk is where the stalk is broken off at the node. Also, while looking for insects, you want to look for weeds. This year, pigweed, volunteer corn, ragweed, water hemp, velvet leaf, and sunflower are very popular. A couple of examples to kill these weeds would be Roundup, Sure Start, and Callisto. If there are yellow spots in the field, farmers may want to take tissue samples. To take a tissue sample, depending on which stage the corn is at, there is a book that tells you how to do it. And this is the stages that you need and it shows you which leaves you want to take off. This is a couple examples of what your feedback would be and tells you what you need to put on for the next coming years. The leaves that you take from the sample depends on which stage the corn is at. Now that the corn is between stages V6 and VT, which is tasseling, to find the node you have to cut the stalk in half at the bottom. Down in the bottom there will be four, between this raised root and down in the bottom there should be 4 nodes, and then there's a node at every leaf. This is how you count the stages now. After VT or tasseling, there is R1, which is silking, and R2, which is blistering, which this corn stalk is at, because it's already silking and this is already blistering. About the end of July, farmers should be seeing blistering. By seeing ears starting to fill out on the stalk, this means it is time for harvest to start. Taking place in the fall is the harvest. After reaching the blistering stage, R3 is milking, R4 is doughing, and R4 doughing occurs. By the beginning of September, the corn should be reaching R5, which is denting. Harvest time depending on what you are going to use your corn for. If you are going to cut silage, the percent of moisture needs to be 55 to 65%. If you are going to use the corn for high moisture corn, the moisture needs to be about 33%. Storing the corn in a bin, the moisture should be about 18%. The farmer turns the fans on to get the moisture down about 15%. That way it can sell the corn at top dollar. Some farmers just feed the corn to the cattle. After harvest, some farmers like to put fertilizer on the fields before the first snow or first freeze. After the farmers if the farmer has high pH, this would be a great time to apply lime, because lime is supposed to be applied 3 to 6 months before planting, according to the fall fertilizer recommendations. Phosphorus and potassium is applied during the fall to prevent runoff. Nitrogen can be applied during the fall to help the workload in the spring, but nitrogen can run off and may be put on again during the springtime. From picking out your seed to getting the corn ready for the end product, there are a lot of steps and hard work involved. By knowing your stages, the farmer knows when to spray fertilizer chemicals, take tissue samples, and when is the right moisture to chop or harvest. Farming is hard work, and there is a lot of people behind just one ear of corn. Here is the seed guide that you can look at, and here are a couple of brochures on chemicals and fertilizers.